Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're having an enjoyable World Aviation Festival day. Oh, Gulis, nice to see you. um, so I have a very, very special panel today of real A-listers. We're going to talk today about leadership. Our panel is called Lift Off to Leadership. So we're delighted to have so many of you in the audience. My name is Sumati Sharma. I'm your moderator today. I'm a London-based aviation partner at Oliver Wyman. I'm also the founder and co-chair of the Women in Aviation and Aerospace Charter in the UK. I founded that charter in 2018 when I worked at Virgin Atlantic, actually, and we have an ex-colleague of mine from Virgin on stage, for which I'm delighted. I spent 16 years at Virgin, and in 2018 was the year in the UK gender pay gap reporting became a requirement. That was the first time data came out that told us we have real disparity in our gender pay in our aviation industry. So I was compelled to use my power and privilege to set up the charter. We launched with 40 founding signatories, such as big names like BA, Heathrow, Virgin, EasyJet. We now have 250 signatories. So today I'm actually delighted we talk about inclusive leadership, so taking it to the next level. Inclusive leaders are individuals like those on my panel who are highly aware of themselves, their own biases, and they actively seek out and consider different perspectives when they do their work, how they set up their teams, and how they collaborate with others. They naturally create, and I've had a chance to work with all of them in different forms over the years, they naturally do create a sense of belonging with those that they work with. So it was important for me to put this panel together because they really think about making sure people feel valued, and they focus on them ensuring they reach their full potential. So I'm going to briefly introduce you, do a quick intro to each one, and they'll tell you their perspective on how they move from talk to actions on this topic. So let me start first with the Heather. Heather Figallo. If you do not know her, you will very soon. So Heather joined Vueling in 2019. She first was Director of Transformation. She's now Chief Transformation Officer at Vueling. Before that, she was at Southwest Airlines for many years, and she was Senior Director of Innovation, Design, and Entrepreneurship. So welcome, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
Delighted to have you. Second, we have Corneel on the stage. So he's the Chief Customer and Operating Officer at Virgin Atlantic in London. But as you can tell from his name, he's Dutch. So he has 25 years of aviation experience. He has held senior leadership positions with Virgin Atlantic, Delta Airlines, I think Aero Mexico. I've probably missed out, but such varied experience. Corneel, I'm delighted you're on stage with us.
Great to be here with you, Sumati. You're well briefed.
And then last but absolutely not least, the wonderful Esmé Valk. So if you don't know Esmé, again, you will get to know her today. Esmé has over 15 years of experience in the HR field, and this year was the winner of CHRO Award of the Year. So congrats, I was delighted to see that. It's well deserved. She's CHRO of Royal Schiphol Group, and she has been there since 2021. And she's part of the Schiphol executive team. And welcome, Esmé.
Thank you. And I'm actually with Schiphol since 2017, so a little bit longer, but in different roles. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, okay. Sorry for my miscommunication,
not at all.
Fabulous. Well, you've been there obviously 17
Through COVID, through the whole 9 yards. Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll start first with you, Heather.
Okay,
and
let's do it.
And my first question I'm going to ask all of my panelists. So first of all, why are you so passionate about inclusive leadership and more broadly diversity and inclusion? And then secondly, I've got to know you. You're an American. You're a senior female aviation leader who kicks ass. You work in Spain. So tell us more about how you approach your life as a senior leader in aviation, but also in Spain and at Vueling.
Okay, so I'll start with the first question about why I feel like inclusive leadership and inclusion is so important. And actually, I always say when I speak on this topic, I wish it would go beyond inclusion, because inclusion feels like an obligation. Right? Like if you were little and your parents said you have to include somebody, it would be like, okay. So I really feel like where we need to go with this whole topic is more about celebration, right? So it's more about people appreciating their differences and their nuances, appreciating their experiences, whether it's cultural or lifestyle or your work experience. So why do I care, right? A couple of things. I mean, very selfishly, I'll just be selfish for a minute. As the Chief Transformation Officer and as sort of the change agent, I'm always doing these change roles. Usually we're tasked with solving the company's biggest problems, right? And so when you're challenged with, okay, we need to do something really bold and we need to do something really experimental and really different, if I have 10 people sitting in the room that think exactly the same way, all come from aviation, all have the same background, all have the same exact upbringing, whatever, like we're all going to get to one answer. Versus when I feel like diversity and including people and really listening to their different perspectives is actually a tool in my toolbox from a transformation perspective to solve a problem. Right. So I used to say, when I was in the States, I would have to hire a new position or hire a person. And I actually eliminated the requirement for a college degree. Because I'm like, Steve Jobs didn't have a college degree. Bill Gates didn't have, all these people, they didn't get college degrees. They had amazing experience and amazing knowledge. So we're limiting ourselves when we're even, putting boundaries like that. And I'd say I'd much rather have somebody that brought water to a village, in Costa Rica or something like that, or had some kind of crazy experience because they're a real problem solver. So to me, I want really diverse backgrounds. I want really diversity of thought. And even I was saying earlier, when I hear somebody say something like, let's not invite operations to this meeting. If we invite operations, it's going to get really complicated, right?
It will.
Sorry.
It will.
Behind your back, this actually happens. People say this about
We'll give you 100 reasons why you can't actually deliver it.
And so whenever I hear that, I will kind of it flips a switch in me where it's okay, now I absolutely have to have an operations person because we're not going to solve the problem. We're not going to break down the walls. We're not going to whatever without those people there. And so that's, to me, it's very selfish in that if my job is to lead the change and to solve the company's biggest problems, I have to have it. I can't, it's not a nice, it's this is a tool in the toolbox for solving problems and listening to people and celebrating their differences. Now, as far as being an American in Spain, it's been definitely a very interesting cultural adjustment for me, and I would say probably my biggest challenge is the language. Yeah. I would love to say that I'm one of these people that can just pick up a language like this, but it's been very difficult. But I think, one of the things that I love about where technology is going today, and just the topic right before us was, AI and generative AI and all of this. It's one of the beauties of the technology is it's actually breaking down all of these barriers. Is I can speak in my mother tongue, I can have other people speak in their native language, and we can get the nuance, right? So it's if I tried to explain the transformation in my kindergarten level Spanish, it's really difficult. But what I really love about the way Europe is, where people are so much more open to different backgrounds and different experiences, but also that technology is kind of coming along to drive inclusivity through these very, very basic, we have to be able to talk. Yeah. Right, and if I can communicate with you, then we can go on. So I guess that's my experience. Is that what you were looking for?
Perfect. Any thoughts from our other panelists on anything there?
And I do include operations people.
You do?
Yes.
And you wanted to ask me a question today.
How do you do it all? How are you able to do it all, Corneel?
To combine it all, you mean?
To combine it all.
I got a great support network. I got great support at home, I'll tell you that. And my boss is very supportive too. Thank you.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Heather. And I also must say, I know how hard it is to learn a language, and so congrats to you for holding some of your meetings in Spanish, because I'm sure it's not easy to say airline terms. I presume RASK is still RASK and CASK is still CASK?
Yes.
So.
Yes, thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Okay, excellent. Corneel, over to you now. It's also a pleasure to have you on the stage with us. So why are you so passionate about inclusive leadership? And also, with your 25 years in the global industry, you've worked in different continents, you know, as we said, AFKL, Delta, Aeromexico, Virgin. What do you think really needs to happen to make a systematic change? We were talking about some of the data and stats, something like 3% of senior leadership roles in aviation are female globally. So
13% only.
It's very low.
Yeah.
And so what do you think needs to change to make a step change there? And also, how do we get more authentic, visible male allies like you in the industry speaking about this?
That's a lot of questions in one.
Yeah.
I can relate to showing up in Mexico and only speaking 2 words, I think, gracias and cerveza. That got me quite far. No, what I love first of all about aviation is how global it is, how it connects cultures, how it's a people business, but so complex and so dependent with so many dependencies at the same time, and how do you navigate your way through? I remember I came originally to aviation from a very active student life in Groningen up north in the Netherlands. And I'm sure my lectures wouldn't have said active, but it was very active outside uni. And it was really balanced. Very powerful leaders, female leaders running student societies and student politics. And it felt very, very balanced. And then I entered aviation with this beautiful company that sponsors today. And it was such a male-dominated world. They were hiring trainees, a lot of females, but if you just looked up and there were 1 or 2 female leaders and very, very few. And then I looked outside in aviation and it was the same all over. And aviation has progressed a little bit, but yeah, only 13% of C-level leaders in aviation are female. If you look at Fortune 500, CEOs, probably 10%, in aviation around 10%, so we all have work to do in any industry. But I remember coming in and being like flabbergasted of how male-dominated it was. And so very early on in my career, I actually volunteered for something called Opportunity in Bedrijf, to be following the stories of female leaders and understanding their barriers and how to progress. And I've been passionate about the topic ever since, but I've been all around the world in actually, you know, in Japan, in Mexico, in Africa, Middle East, in very sort of where you would not see a lot of females around the table. And I missed that. I always remembered how much more fun it had, the superpower of diverse views. And I don't think you want to generalize too much and say males are like this and females are like that. But I think more diverse views around the table, more perspectives, more experience really do make for a better business. I think all of you should reflect, if you ever sit in a team, an executive team or whatever the team may be, where, you know, just the opinion of the sort of group think happens a lot, or actually it's chief think and just the opinion of the dominant person in the room, there's something wrong. And then I came to Virgin Atlantic, where we believe that anybody can take on the world. We're really about being yourself. And I had the opportunity during COVID, when the operational team and the customer-facing teams got combined, to pick and select my own leadership. And I made sure that out of 6 vice presidents, which I'm blessed to work with, that 3 are strong female leaders in the operation, on the customer side. And not just you know, the person running the customer centers is female. Now the person that runs the core of our operation is female as well. And we have that balance, and we're so much more ourselves. And I really think it lives what we do. And I certainly feel much better working in a team like that. I think beyond inclusion, I think it really is about belonging. Do you feel that you can be yourself? Can others at all levels give a contribution and truly be themselves? Think about it. If you feel that you belong to a team, you're going to give the extra mile. So it's really productivity related, it's performance related. There's a lot of study out there. And lastly, you asked about allyship. Yeah, I am officially nominated to be the ally of our gender network. It's a tremendously powerful group of women called Scarlet. Look, we have a family network, we have LGBTQ+, of course. We have a carers network, we have a disability network, we have a ethnic diversity network, and a gender diversity network. And I got nominated as the ally. I think you got to be really careful with that. So I actually was hesitant to come on stage with you today, because I think once you give yourself the label and go like, I'm the ally, sorry, you know, I don't think that kind of works. I think you, you shouldn't be on stage. You should be off stage. You should making sure that we have, balanced representation, that you don't take over, that you don't tell a grassroots network how to run their business. So I'm always in the background, really supportive, trying to realize how big part of the bias in business is also, with me, with all of us, and how do you, I really believe in action over words, so I think it's kind of hard to sit here on stage and talk about the topic, but yeah, it's a topic really close to my heart.
So at Vueling, we have, I don't know, we never have spoken about this in the last couple of days, but I don't know if we have the first, I believe it's the first woman CEO in a Spanish airline.
Fantastic.
And we have 50-50 women on our management committee. And, for a while, it was actually 70% women on our management committee, and our CEO was like, we need a little, we need to get the diversity back, or we're too diverse, we're diverse the other way. But I agree with you, it's really nice to be in a management committee that's well-balanced. I think just well-balanced perspectives, and then also that the women that are in leadership are in very critical business roles, right? So it's not some of these, we kind of have reverse, where typically a chief people officer a lot of times is a woman, ours is a man. So like we've mixed it up quite a bit at Vueling. And I think maybe we have the luxury of being a quite younger airline, so we're only 20. But I guess you guys are about
40.
Yeah, you're a little bit older
Double
than that. But in growing the pipeline of leadership, I think that we have a little bit of advantage because we're such a young airline. It didn't take as much time to get women through the pipeline to be able to be. But without leaders and allies like Luis Gallego and other people that are in IAG are just such advocates for women. I think it makes a huge difference.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Corneel. And by the way, I think it is really great to have a male ally like you on stage. And I know you are more action than words, but it means a lot that you're also here, so thank you. Esmé, so over to you. I'm going to ask you the same first question. So why are you personally so passionate about inclusive leadership? And then I'll switch gears a bit. Obviously at Schiphol in Amsterdam, you went through a deep crisis. You were there through that. How has this impacted your leadership model at Schiphol? And then finally, how do you see your and Schiphol's role in the industry in supporting the drive to diversify the workforce, talent, and attracting the next generation of leaders, especially here in the Netherlands? You have such a big role, not just at the airport, but for the community.
Yeah, we
So
do.
over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I will answer those questions in a few minutes. But I was wondering if we could do something with you. So can you please stand up for me? Because there are people on their phones, and I think it's a half an hour, and then we have a wine tasting. So it's good if we get a little bit of energy in the room. So can you please find somebody you don't really know? Because we're also here to mingle and to learn from each other. So guys on the side, please step in, come to the middle and join us. Thank you. And also on this side, please join, come to the front a little bit. And find somebody you just don't know, you haven't met, you haven't spoken to today. And can you please, and you already start mingling, and that's the whole risk I'm taking here. So can you please discuss with each other and take about 2 minutes each. What have you done as a concrete action to stimulate diversity or make your company a little bit more inclusive? Can you think of something as a good example where you've done that? So please take 2 minutes, and then after 2 minutes, I say 2 minutes, and then you change to the other person. So please take a minute, you've started already, and then after I'll walk around to see if there are some nice examples. Take it away.
Yes?
Do you also want to walk around with your hand held? And I could say, Heather, you have an example there? But you don't have to. I mean, if you take the right, I'll take the left. Okay? We have 28 minutes until the bar opens. I think we have 1 more minute and then a change.
Oh, you want to?
Come.
It's off.
They're hijacking.
Yeah, it's on.
So please change roles so the other one can share their experience. Thank you. 2 more minutes.
And then we'll get some discussion started.
Me? Yeah, I think the best position is to hire different people. Because different background, but also in terms of policy, we have really revealed 5 dimensions of so disability. So I think on a few concrete actions and policies and hiring, rewriting the CLA, instead of in certain ways, just make it much broader. So a few things. Install governance, install people that are dedicated to working on these themes. So we've done stuff. It's not perfect. Okay, we threw our minutes. Can you please sit a bit up front or in the middle so I don't have to walk that far? Who has a great example? Who learned something good or has something that they want to implement or share? Is there anybody who has an example? They're still going on here with the conversation. In the middle? Anyone? Or I'll just give you the phone. Nobody? Ladies? Anybody? I could do that. Marco, yeah, you want to share something?
I'll share a comment on behalf of the group, but I think the observation was that we might have a cultural mindset, and sorry, this is with the Brazilian team from Gol, that we observed that what happens in Spain in the diversity you see at Vueling, that there's actually not cultural constraints to achieve that. So I thought it was actually interesting. You can't just say because we're more Latin that we can't find the same level of diversity, and we have good examples in Spain. So I think that was a good learning from me.
Good. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to share what they talked about here? Are you? No. That's perfectly fine. Are you still working on this theme, or is there anything else? No. If not, that's fine. Anybody else? Here? No? No? Okay, then I'll go back and give answers to the questions. So why am I passionate about it? Well, I would say because, well, I'm not saying this is how I got in this position, but I mean, it works, right? To have a different type of people in the boardroom, to have different perspectives, and it's not really a gender thing. We were also talking about that. There's also females that are very masculine. There's men that are super feminine. So it's not really about that. It's about having different perspectives on themes just to enrich your point of view. I think that's the whole point of this. And I was 39, I think, when I got a board position within Schiphol Group, one of the youngest members. And I think that I bring in a different sound, different generation. And I'm really happy that in these days, it's common practice, or it's starting to get more normal, I would say. And the good thing is now I'm in a position where I can also hire different profiles, different backgrounds, etc. So that's I think that's really helpful. Looking at Schiphol and the crisis we went through, yeah, that was not good. So I don't know if you traveled through Schiphol in the years of 22, but it was just horrendous. There were lines that were so long. I mean, it was like a Starbucks in the center of Amsterdam. It was super bad. The whole media was raving about it. And that's just after COVID. So it took about a year to recover from that. And it was a very painful process, but it was also a very good learning experience where we've seen that we have, and if I reflect on it, we have, we were a bit distant to the real business and really get a deep understanding of what it is, what the business really is if you work in security, if you work in operations or ground handling, because maybe different than the airports you work with, we have a few of our major operational processes outsourced to different companies. And I think what happened, we outsourced the work, but we also outsourced the knowledge, so we didn't really know what was going on. So the first thing that we changed is change the management board structure. So we went from a management board of 3 to an executive committee of 6. And that is, so Heather confirmed that, like, if you have to have a conversation with operations and infrastructure and commercial, they always have different, how do I say that? Belangen. Like a point of view and a different interest. So now, having them all in the management board, you just need to sort it out, and you need to determine together what is your main interest and what is the greater good above all this. So I think that's super helpful. We also changed our leadership profile. So we said, okay, we had a profile that was super complex, 14 dimensions. I mean, who can live up to that, right? To 14 dimensions. So we changed it into a very simple model. It's called LIFT, actually. So it's good that the name of the title is this. But what we changed it from an old profile that was more around shaping strategy and empower. So it was really more distant. Now to taking ownership and lead with empathy, put more of the humanity back in the boardroom, but also in your conversations and your leadership style. So the people we looked for is a completely different person than it was a few years ago. So I think 50% of our leaders work less than 2 years within our company. And that's pretty intense because it's a very complex industry. It's heavily regulated, so it's difficult to understand our business. But I think in the end, these are the right people on board, and it's really a different culture, I would say, by now. And your last question about the industry and how we will contribute, especially with new talent, etc. For us, it's not only the industry, it's the society. We are a state-owned company, or for most of it. We have 70,000 people working at Schiphol on a daily basis, I would say, in all sort of constructs. So we're basically a city. And if you have a city and you're the mayor of that city, you have the responsibility to take care of your people and to have a very diverse set of people that is representative for our country at least. So we work a lot with, for example, municipalities to have programs and also to with schools, etc. To how can we do more of the inflow, for example, from schools, how we can. So also for the youngsters, I heard you say all your dimensions that you have with the diversity and with the backgrounds and gender, etc. But also, we also have one called youth, because we've seen that also that is not representative right now at Schiphol. So we have an additional focus on that. So I must say, yeah, we're not there yet, but we're making some steps.
On that, on the youth, you can really change the dial indeed by inspiring kids in school. 5% of aircraft engineers in the world licensed are female, only 5%.
Yeah, that's not.
We have 40 apprenticeships across the company, and one of the most active is apprenticeship in engineering and maintenance. And for the last 5 or 6 years, every year we've been able to find 50-50 female male. So that's really going to change. A sea of change is coming, thankfully. But it does start at inspiring them at school to know that it's for them and they can be welcome.
Completely agree. You have to meet them where they're at. Don't be arrogant and think they'll find you. We really have to be there in that place. That's also something we learned. So a good example. Yeah, I like that.
I think one of the things, you know, it's speaking about like just the basics, right? So it's like from an inclusion standpoint, like making sure everybody can understand their language. Right, this is a very basic thing. One of the things I studied, not in Europe, but in the United States, was the sense of belonging, like even in the buildings. Like, so a lot of the airports in the United States were built many years ago when there actually weren't so many women working below the wing, and they didn't have women's bathrooms. I mean, something is just so if you go work at a place where you can't even go to the bathroom, right? So it's like, I mean, it was very outdated. It's all been fixed, but I think this to me was the most eye-opening thing. It's like a lot of times we think about what are all the things that we're going to do at this really high-level leadership, and how are we going to do these really advanced things, and it's like, wait, let's just make sure everybody can talk to each other. Let's make sure everybody can go to the bathroom. Let's make sure everybody has, you know, everybody feels like they fit in here. Let's just start with the really low-level stuff. Like make sure we just actually a couple of years ago at Vueling did a revamp of our policies as well. So like for flight benefits, it used to be, you know, your spouse and your children. And now it's just people you love, right? So it doesn't matter who they are. It's just people you love, right? And everybody has the same number. Like my husband and I have 4 children. So in the past model, we would have had 6 spots, right? But now everybody has 6 spots, right? And it doesn't matter who you fill it up with. So I think, you know, as much as I agree with all of this, like inspiring and pushing and, you know, doing this, at the beginning, you just have to start with the very fundamental, like bottom of the, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, do we have care, feeding? Can we communicate? Are you, you know, are we watering the plants, right? And then we can build and get to this like kind of self-actualization place. But to me, this is my most important thing is just the basics.
Yeah, I love that example of the flight policies. We're looking at it as well, because not everybody has a traditional family, right, anymore. So you got to be just who are your loved ones, and could they get on the list? We're looking at that. We've done a lot of work on what are the barriers. Because we have achieved 50% above manager, 50% of leadership is female, but we still have too many dropping out. Yeah. And why? And just understanding those barriers and making it a topic that can be talked about. So we do a lot of policies around menopause now, which is kind of hard for us to relate to, but we really do talk about it and try to understand and be empathetic and understand what support around care for elderly, around fertility, around loss of pregnancy, all topics that are can be so important in the career or life of a woman, and we try to really match those policies so that, you know, everybody can take on the world and we don't have dropouts. And it's a lot of work. It's hard work, but step by step.
It's so nice. I'd like to, after this, talk to you more about that. I think it's so nice.
Yes.
I think what's so nice, I mean, I've done 20 years in the aviation industry, and these conversations did not happen, I tell you, 20 years ago in the aviation. So it's good to see the progress. I guess what I'll do, by the way, is I'm going to ask one question to the panel, and I'd love a question or two from the audience. So be brave. I'm sure you've got a question to ask. So I'll come to you in a minute. Please prepare. I'm going to ask sort of one question to each of you. Now, I think we all agree this topic is super important. But when you're in your leadership team meeting next Monday or Tuesday, whenever it is, there'll be other questions. OTP, what's our EBITDA, NPS, blah, blah, blah. We need to hit all these metrics. How do you get this topic priority with your exec teams, make sure you deliver, and then how do you measure the success? That's a question to each of you on this.
So a couple of years ago, I mean, during COVID was an opportunity for us to look at all of these things really in depth. We actually have, a diversity and inclusion charter that has several different strategic pillars, and one of them is count the numbers, but make the numbers count. Okay. Right? So it's not just enough to fill the numbers and whatever. We actually need to understand what those mean. So our chief people officer does a really good job about, so on the annual reviews, and we looked at everybody's rating. He actually took that away and then said, is this calibration fair? How are women represented in this? Are we being hard? So for us to analyze ourselves, are we harsher on women? Are we easier on women? How is it looking? Is it kind of well balanced? Is it in something that we would expect? And he brings those things regularly into management committee. Yeah. Okay. So that's one example.
Yeah, for us, numbers do count. So on the one hand, we love to tell a story as Virgin Atlantic. We're pretty good at that. When we have it, we flaunt it. So that's, the marketeers and the brand people would go wow, you got amazing stories there that we can tell. And it does resonate very much also with the new generations. So that's one. But obviously, it's not about that. It is about what we're trying to achieve. So we set stringent targets, and we actually make it part of our reward package at senior level, where we move the needle every year on the different angles of diversity. So clearly not just gender, also ethnicity, and we set different targets per work group, and if we don't hit them, we just try to understand the root cause. So for us, it's just one of the indicators that we review basically in our quarterly review meetings, and just part of doing business, because it makes for a better business, and we all know that. And also when you can accommodate people to truly be themselves, they shine. And we can all train in D&I and tick the boxes, but when our people truly belong, what they deliver out there and up there is just can't be copied.
Amazing. Esmé?
Yeah, it's. I don't want to repeat the both of you, but of course, I think we also have that, and also I echo you. Everything important deserves a dashboard, right? So we also report on it and we talk about it. We have this whole champion group that all is covering one of our, we call it dimensions. So youth, it's all the mentioned before. And I think that ESG and the whole reporting on CSRD is helping us also in the future. It will be more about focused about socially, and what do you do to become a more inclusive workforce, and everything that you, all the initiatives that you take. So that will probably be an uplift in the years to come.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I said I would come to the audience for questions. So if you've got a question, please put your hand up. I think we have some roving mics coming around. Here, we have a question over here, if you wouldn't mind.
Is there somebody?
Somebody's coming there. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and where you're from, and then ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Caroline Rotier. I work for KLM. And we do have diversity and inclusion programs, but I see a lot of backlash from also the work floor, calling it woke, and saying why should we put any emphasis or have a diversity inclusion week or month in our company, whilst we should be dealing with our operational problems, etc., etc. How do you deal with that? Do you have that too, that kind of backlash?
One of you?
Well, we don't have anything like that. I think our teams are so supportive and they really want it. So I haven't experienced anything like that. That's unfortunate.
we don't have backlash internally, but externally you can sometimes sense that. Particularly in the US, I think there's a sort of, it's a kicking back on some of that, and woke is a real topic. Not as much in the UK or how we operate. The one thing that I find very important is there's a lot, and this is a hard thing for me to say, because on the one hand, we realize that it's easier for guys, right? I realize it is easier for me to get to where I am than it has been or is for many women colleagues. Where it gets, if we start talking about white male privilege, I can start sort of sensing a bit like, oh, on the one hand I know I'm lucky and I'm privileged, on the other hand, talking a lot about that makes me feel excluded. So I think you got to be careful. We see that with our pilots. 90% of our pilots are, quite senior, sort of old white guys, put it this way. And we see that we got to make sure that we work on inclusivity and on more female pilots and ethnically diverse pilots without making them feel that we're not so proud of them too. We're super proud of them. So I think you just need to just make sure that, that you don't start to exclude certain groups because you want to include other groups. It's about everything, and it's about everybody's contribution. I think that's really important.
That's right.
So no, we don't have that kickback, but we do occasionally need to be really clear with our white pilots that we do love them too, and that they're super important to the business. So I hope that resonates with you a little bit.
Yeah, and Corneel, to add on that, what you're saying is where you got now that as a white male privileged, it was easier. But I think now you really see a tipping point. I see also from my position, sometimes it's really difficult to explain to a company why I hired a man who's white and who's in his 50s. Was there really nothing better around? That's the questions that we get. So and that's not fair either. I mean, that's a very poor discussion. But of course, I read the papers and I've seen it. I've seen your discussions on KLM. I think it's very poor, but it's part of, I think, where you're at right now with the operational and financial challenges that you have ahead of you, that you get some pushback, and you will always have people that say, okay, is this really a problem now that we should invest time in? And I think the answer is yes, and they'll get to that point, but it's a journey. It's not a one-time thing, so hang in there. And the media is fierce here in the Netherlands, I know that.
The media is really fierce here. Thanks for the question.
Yeah,
thank you.
Great question. It is a very difficult topic to talk about, I would say. It's something, so just to share with the group, I'm a qualified chartered accountant, I'm a strategy partner, I work solely with data. To talk about this topic for me is also difficult. So the level of nuance and leaders talking about this with real great care is not an easy job to do. And at the end of the day, it's something that has to be talked about, but also it links to priorities as well. How do you do it at what time? But great question. We have time for one more question, if there is one. There's one there. Again, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, where you're from, and your question. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Marianne, I'm from EasyJet. I've got sort of two questions, if you like, although they're interconnected. I guess the first one to panel is, with your D&I strategy, like what targets are you setting the organisation, and how on track are you to reach those targets? And then also regarding the networks that you talked about, how do you govern them? Are they just kind of left to kind of just do their own thing? And what are you, or how are you measuring the success of the networks as well?
Great question. Who wants to take it?
Yeah, around the networks, we don't measure the success of the networks. Because we looked at giving it quite a lot of structure potentially, really while willing the company to lean in, and I think that's the wrong thing to do. I think it's really important that networks are grassroots. So what we tend to do is, they all have an agenda, they all have a plan, it's just go and say, how can we support? So we, for example, for the gender diverse network, we support with female leadership training, especially for females, and overcoming barriers, and it's called Springboard, it's amazing. But we support time, we support budget, often we support, they want to do a lot of very inspirational comms in school, for example, for STEM-based topics, to get more girls into being interested in STEM and a career in science or a career in aviation, we support with the comms team, giving them the tools to shoot some really professional, inspirational videos. So whatever they need to support, we try to not give it too much structure, so no targets for the networks, but they've grown from strength to strength, and they're all really different. And like the latest one we added was a family network. Carers and family and really cool to be adding an extra network. So we don't prescribe too much. As for your targets, we have formal targets on all of it, right? All the different management layers, diversity targets from ethnicity, gender, and we measure our targets and how many female pilots we're trying to hire. And by the way, thank you for the fantastic partnership with EasyJet on having some of our EasyJet pilots come to Virgin Atlantic to fly wide-body planes. Really cool, real big tool of engagement in EasyJet. Really cool for us to get some of the best pilots on the market. So those corporations are just amazing. So yeah, we set a lot of targets, but we don't set targets for the networks. They're grassroots.
Same. Our networks are completely organic and kind of self-run, but supported by the organization. And then the other thing I think is important is that the targets are a range. Like 40 to 60% women, 40 to 60% men, that it's not like we have to be at 50 or, you know what I mean? Like it's, let's have a range, right? Because life happens and things are fluid. And so I think one of the things we've just recently made is that we're looking at the targets more as a range. But as far as being on target, I think at Vueling, we're quite ahead actually in diversity, especially gender diversity.
Can I answer very quickly?
Yes,
because
of course,
I know we're through time. But we have two challenges on measuring. We have targets, we have the range, but in terms of privacy, also in terms of background, can you ask that? Can you put it in the system? Can you track on it, whatever? So that's kind of challenging. And so we're not complete. So we're looking at what is the right question to ask. And then at the level you set the target. So let's say, for example, you say that you would like your workforce to be by culture, let's say 30% at least, or between 30 and 40%, then you might think, oh, we're doing pretty well. But then if I do a down drill on these numbers, they're all, for example, in operations, and that's not exactly what we want. So we're getting into really defining within each group, each function, what we want to achieve, what is helpful in that specific area. So that's what we learned over the year. To have only high-level targets, it doesn't bring us anywhere. Thank you for your question.
Fabulous. Thank you for the question. And we're out of time, so I want to say a huge thanks and a big round of applause for our amazing panelists, for Heather, Corneel, and Esmé. Thank you so much.